Well, hello there. We're in for a big ass video tonight, so buckle up buckaroos, as today's character is probably the most offensive thing I've done so far in this game. And I mean that in the sense that a lot of the bosses in this video needed a second run because their first death to the character lasted 5 seconds. So if you didn't notice the thumbnail or title, we're doing some Saviour action, and boy, I wasn't ready for the power that came from that. Now, I know that the saying around these parts is that the Saviour is not budget friendly, and I agree, because the Saviour alone is not enough to deal the big ticket DPS. However, the sword is currently going for 5 exiles, and while I know that to a good chunk of people 5 exiles is their total currency in a league, you gotta keep in mind that this sword was 4 times that price last league, and it started pretty close to that number this specific time. Granted, thanks to Harold and Haroldine, a lot of aspirational gear is currently cheap as heck, so taking advantage of the situation, using the Saviour was a no-brainer, which is why I decided to invest into making this character a freaking monster. However, before we go any further, my name is Andro and I post PoE content regularly. That may interest you, and if you find tonight's content entertaining, don't forget to rate the video and subscribe to the channel. I've been stuck in the 380s, 390 subs for quite a bit, and I'd really like to hit 400 or more soon, and with your help, random viewer, we can get there. Okay, enough of that. You're here for some unethical Saviour usage, and because of that, let's talk about what the hell is going on with this character. So as the video title states and the thumbnail, I'm playing a Chieftain, using the aforementioned Saviour and an offhand Paradoxica. The skill is Infernal Blow, and we are converting 100% of the damage to fire damage. I went with the Chief bro because he really is the king of fire damage, and his bonuses synergize nicely with the skill I'm using, though you can go with other ascendancies such as the Inquisitor, a Berserker, Raider, hell, even an Elementalist, though the tree for that may be a complete mess. Besides that, thanks to the Saviour's clones and Ancestral Call, we can clear most maps relatively fast due to how many entities are dealing damage around us. If you really think about it, we're kind of a minion build, though I'm sure that line probably roused some Jimmies out there. Anyways, even though the sword is kind of budget friendly, quote unquote, at the moment, the rest of the gear we're using is a bit expensive. However, you can do certain swaps here and there to make this a bit more accessible, and we'll talk about that later down the video. And as always, before we dig into the gear, we're gonna take a look at the skill tree, which looks like first, central and most important piece of equipment is the Saviour. Try to get a nice roll, and if you can, corrupt it with Bestiary for 30% quality, you know, for more dips. However, keep your eyes peeled, because if you're gonna trade for one, a lot of cheaply priced Saviours are corrupted with Resolute Technique, and that's effectively a brick, aka useless, so avoid playing yourself and trade smartly. The next thing in your gearing list is your offhand weapon, and for that a Paradoxica is hard if not impossible to beat. I recommend getting one with 1.4 attacks per second and at least 150 physical DPS. We are using this weapon because the only way a foil beats it is by getting a 400 physical DPS foil and plenty of crit multi or other useful mods. So yeah, Paradoxica for life. Moving on, let's talk about the head bucket. And we are gonna need a Warlord influenced helmet with increased elemental elemental damage and either crit multi or nearby enemies have negative fire resistance. The latter has the chunky DPS gains, but the former is easier to come by. At the same time, we want life and resists. Optimally, this helmet is enchanted with either attack speed with an ancestral protector, infernal blow gains fist damage as extra fire, or infernal blow damage. Next is the body armor, and I recommend getting an astral plate with as much resistance and life as possible. However, the smart choice is getting either an elder or a hunter influenced chest with life, resists, and attacks have percentage to crit chance. That way you can drop Asmark from the ring and use flame ability instead. Talking about that ring, we are gonna need a ring with Asmark on hit, life, and any resists that you can muster. Anything else that spawns here is a bonus. However, we need an open suffix for a frenzy charge. If you got the crit chance on the body, use flame ability or elemental weakness on hit instead. The other ring needs life, resists, and as many DPS enhancing mods as you can get. Things like melee damage, physical damage to attacks, elemental damage with attack skills, increased fire damage. Anything that increases the thickness of the hits is good. However, this also needs an open suffix for another frenzy charge. The amulet needs life, elemental damage with attack skills, crit chance, and a resist. As a whole, the character is a bit dexterity starved, so try to get a base with dexterity to leverage that need. The amulet needs an open suffix for the last frenzy charge, and we are gonna anoint it with Fatal Blade for the DPS. Moving on to the gloves, we are using Hands of the High Templar with attacks have percentage to crit chance, attack speed, and aura levels as corruption implicits. The legs are next, and you want two-tone boots with dexterity, life, and resists. Optimally, a warlord influenced pair with gain fizz as extra fire will be unethical as heck. Anyways, these need an elemental penetration enchantment. The belt is a Stygian Vice, to no one's surprise. I'm reheating one I had from the Chieftain Hollow Palmer because we wanted dexterity, life, a resist or 2, and elemental damage with attack skills. The jewel on the belt needs life, gain fizz as extra fire on crit, and crit multi. There are other mod combinations like fire or elemental corrupted implicits, attack speed, crit chance, fizz damage to attacks or sword attacks, or the elemental penetration suffix, so it's up to you in that regard. For flasks, we use a Cinder Swallow Urn, a Lion's Roar, and a Diamond Flask. Now for jewels on the tree, we got some mess to go through. The first and most important one is a large cluster jewel with 8 passives at most. Drive the Destruction, Fuel the Fight, and 2 jewel sockets. Drive the Destruction gives us Life Leech and Life Leech recovery rate, and Fuel the Fight gives us the Mana Leech and damage while leeching. We're also using 2 medium cluster jewels with 5 passives at most. The first of which has a jewel socket, Haunting Shout, and Moth Mentality. Haunting Shout intimidates nearby enemies on Warcry use, and Moth Mentality gives us 5 rage whenever we Warcry. Plus, both of them give Warcry cooldown recovery speed, which is nice. The other medium cluster jewel has a jewel socket, Warning Call, and Provocateur. Warning Call gives us melee crit chance and melee crit multi if we Warcry recently, while Provocateur gives us crit chance and crit multi against enemies taunted by the Warcry. And we're not done with the jewels yet, no. We're also using a Crispy Watcher's Eye with Game Fizz as extra fire while affected by anger, and attack speed while affected by precision. However, there are other Watcher Eye mods to consider, like crit multi or fire pen with anger, and crit multi or attack damage with precision. Just keep in mind that getting a Watcher's Eye with 2 of any of those mods that I mentioned is a hefty investment. The rest of the jewels need increased maximum life, reduced mana cost of skills, crit chance, and crit multi. I am putting my jewels as examples. However, there are other damage enhancing mods such as fire or elemental penetration corrupted implicits, attack speed, attack damage, etc. So you don't need carbon copies of mine, just similar ones. And that is pretty much the gear, which means it's time for the gem setups. The main skill is first, and in our chest we are socketing Infernal Blow, Awakened elemental damage with attack skills, multi-strike, close combat, fortify, and ancestral call. For single target, you're gonna swap ancestral call for inspiration. And 2 things. The first one, yes, Ruthless hits harder than Inspiration, as does melee fist damage. However, Inspiration is pretty okay for the setup, and the reduced mana cost is a godsend in the boss fights. Second thing, all of the gems are 21-20 with the exception of Awakened elemental damage with attacks, which is level 5 and 12 quality. I recommend going for the same gem setup, though if you can afford more Awakened gems, go for them as well. The next setup are the auras, and they go in the gloves, cause you know, corrupted implicit stuff. Anyways, we want Anger, Herald of Purity, and Precision. and all of them are gonna be linked to Enlighten level 3, optimally Enlighten level 4, and also optimally all auras are level 21 for more dips. The next setup is the Totem setup, and we want Ancestral Protector, Baal Ancestral Warchief, and both are linked to Combustion. Remember that Baal Ancestral Warchief can be up alongside the Protector and he gives you the fat DPS numbers too. We also want a Stormbrand linked to Inspiration and Power Charge on Crit to generate those power charges during boss fights, which also helps undo the idea of using Asmark in the ring slot. Anyways, the rest of the gems are Flame Dash linked to Inspiration and Second Wind, Berserk, Enduring Cry, and a Lightning Golem, even though that one barely sees any usage. Alright, now we can discuss the character's performance, and to be honest, he's pretty okay, like just average. After all, 5-second Conqueror kills are doable by everyone, am I right? Okay, snarky commentary aside, he is a powerhouse. Damage is no issue to this guy, and that makes him fun as heck to play, though I must admit that the map clear is a bit wacky, especially seeing as Infernal Blow enemies' detonations are not a guarantee. And yes, I could have used Explodey Chest for that, but after spending 10 plus Exiles on the gloves, the Paradoxica and the Saviour, I tried to cut corners here and there to not overspend. However, with more investment, this character can go from nuking things to freaking Defcon 1 on the rest of the game. Anything except Uberat City, cause you know, beautiful reflect mechanics. Anyways, I'm also putting an Uber Elder fight, though be warned I died a couple of times because I got greedy and in the end those were my mistakes. The fight should be more than doable deathless. That being said, there is a fat elephant in this room, and that is investing a considerable amount of currency, say 15 plus Exiles, into a Saviour build justifiable. Personally, I'd say that if you have a 15 plus Exile budget for a melee build, there are other less investment heavy builds that can reach similar performance, like Hollow Palm Technique. Sure, the notable puts a dent into the gearing process and limits the skill options, but the playstyle, the damage, the fun factor are all there. That isn't to say that this character doesn't have those highlights, but for the currency that you're exchanging to gear the character, there may be other build alternatives, hence the Hollow Palm comparison. And if you're into those Hollow Palm shenanigans, I did some in the channel that you may be interested in. Overall though, the Saviour lives up to its name. I wasn't lucky enough to get one last league, and I wasn't gonna use it this time around until I saw that it was quote-unquote budget friendly. But hey, thanks to the Harolds and Haroldines, I was able to give the sword a go and I don't regret it one bit. If you end up playing the build, I challenge you to beat my character's DPS. That should be interesting. And that's it for today's build. In a sense, I feel like I've been pushing ultra hard for big dips builds, which is great and all, but I feel like it's time for a laid back, lazy, barely any clicks or keybinds build type deal. So the next one should be something like that. I'm thinking Righteous Fire, but I won't promise anything. However, I'm gonna try and have that up soon, you know, to keep the content flowing and the interest coming, or something like that. So yeah, that's gonna be it for today's content. My voice is breaking down, and I just wanna say that if you enjoyed the video and you aren't subscribed yet, don't forget to do that on the way out. Anyways, thanks for watching. I really hope that you guys and gals liked it, and I'll be back with more PoE fun pretty soon. Take care, have a nice weekend, and I'll catch you again on the next video. Peace out.